you've listened to some of our sessions from earlier in the day. You've experienced this challenge as a customer contact professional. You know that you simply cannot avoid the hype surrounding AI and chatbots. You know it's something that needs to be top of mind. You know it's something that every thought leader in the world is going to be advocating for. Every technology company in the world is going to be pitching. Every contact center, frankly, is thinking about ways to make AI work. Unfortunately, if we look in reverse, we see a lot of mistakes that were made. And some of that is due to choosing technology incorrectly. Some of that might be to the technology not delivering what we thought it would. But far too often, those mistakes are our own doing. We didn't set the processes correctly. We didn't think about AI and bots the way we needed to. We didn't make the right decisions for our contact centers and our customers. Well, as we look toward 2019, as we start to unpack the future of the contact center, it's important to overcome that challenge. It's important to stop just assuming that technology is going to work or assume that the technology will never work and think how we strategically can partner with technology providers, how we can have a vision for our bots and AI and make it work in a way that's customer-centric, efficient, and ultimately contributing to our victory in the war on customer experience. And so that's going to be the topic for today's conversation. And throughout this course, we're going to share a combination of best practices. We're going to share some research. We're also going to have some case studies. And you know me, you know my voice. I'm Brian Cantor. I'm the principal analyst for CCW Digital. I oversee all of our content and research endeavors, as well as all of our advisory material. So when it comes to thinking about ways to excel in the space, that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. And I'm thrilled to be able to share some of those insights with you today. But I'm not the only person speaking. We also have Ted and Shelby from Bright Pattern, who they look at this from a provider perspective. They consider a variety of different clients across all kinds of industries, what they're facing within their customer contact functions, how they're looking about technology, and how to make it work, not insofar as they just choose the right solution, but that they get the most out of that solution and that they build the right business and the right processes around it. So I've said enough about them. I'll give them a chance to talk about themselves a little bit as well. So Ted, let's start with you. How is everything?
Everything's great. Thank you, Brian.
And Shelby, same. How's everything going?
It's great. I'm just excited for this webinar today. I mean, Ted and my role at Bright Pattern is kind of to educate the industry on top trends and tips, and hopefully we can kind of give you that today in regards to AI and chatbots.
And the reason she's so excited is because she already knew the agenda, and there's a lot of great content here. But for those of you who are joining us, let's walk through some of the topics we're going to cover. So first of all, we're going to look at the current state of customer contact, and we're going to identify some challenges that are broadly affecting our ability to connect with customers. Because if you don't know those, if you don't know where the problems and opportunities lie, then you're not ready to have the chatbot conversation. Once we establish that context, though, we can look at how organizations are starting to look at AI, starting to look at chatbots, but maybe make those mistakes. As I referenced earlier, this isn't just an issue of the technology not being good enough or a certain vendor not doing a good job. A lot of the times the issue is we're not thinking about bots correctly. We're not thinking about where they fit into our overall journey and how they can optimize that experience. And we're going to address those mistakes because then we want to jump into tips for actually winning with AI and winning with bots. So we're going to look at a combination of research, insights, case studies that really walk through, here are best practices you need to build your blueprint for the best possible bot strategy. And then we'll close with some in-depth looks at success stories. You don't just want to hear us telling you what you should do. You want to hear us telling you and showing you what some organizations have done to achieve unparalleled success and actually make all the hype and all the excitement around AI and bots become a reality. And so, Ted, I want to kick things over to you to get our discussion started about the state of customer service right now.
Great. Brian, thanks much and a great introduction. So first, again, as Shelby mentioned, really excited to be here today. This is a really fun topic. There's so much going on here right now. I wanted to start a little bit with a little bit of a stake in the ground, and not to be overly dramatic, but I think if we look at customer service today, it's clear there's been so much effort, so much you look at the conferences, the CCW conference, one of the absolute best conferences out there, a lot of the education to try to really improve customer service. But I think what we're still seeing is customer service is still really not anywhere close to where it needs to be, especially with the proliferation of a lot of the new digital channels. A recent study from Bain, and then actually the father of the Net Promoter Score, showed that 80% of CEOs believe they offer a great customer experience, but the stats show that only about 8% of customers agree. And I think the reason for that is if you talk to people, they want low friction personal service across channels. They want self-service, but again, it's got to be frictionless. It can't be like a horrible IVR that drives everybody crazy. They want their choice of digital channels, and as we're seeing more and more now, it's where you are on the go, mobile, wherever you happen to be. You need to respond via text and other ways, wherever you happen to be. So that's where customers are, or what they want actually. And unfortunately, worker today, this is still a really telling stat. This first one of anything is so key. Only 5 to 10% of companies today are doing true omnichannel per IQPC, Gartner, and others. And by omnichannel, I think there's still a lot of confusion about that. But just to put it in very simple terms, it's when you can actually enter in on the channel of your choice and have a seamless, continuous conversation across other channels as you move across the channels, and all the context is carried without having to repeat information. So having that single non-siloed conversation is what omnichannel is about. And unfortunately, even though customers have been clamoring for it for years, and the industry's been talking about it for years, very few companies are doing it today. And then actually another stat shows that 60% of companies are totally siloed, and probably the ultimate thing that really backs up the Bain study above is Forrester, COPC, and others are really showing that CX has not improved in the last 3 years. It's been very flat. Key stat I really like, there's been so much talk about digital disruption. It's sort of like be disrupted, or disrupt or be disrupted is sort of the key theme you hear more and more about today. And one of the quotes that I've heard from both at the Customer Contact Week conference as well as a leading luminary at Gartner is this idea that if you think you're not a digital business, you'll be out of business. And the companies that will win will be the ones who make the most of the business moment. And I really like that phrase, because if you think about it as CX leaders, as customer service leaders, we live right at that business moment. When someone hits your website with a chat, when they come in through your mobile app, when they hit your IVR, when they call you, we're really right at that business moment. So in many ways, it's almost a little scary, but it's also pretty exciting. In our industry, we're right at the point where we can really help our companies be the disruptors versus being disrupted. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So first, take a look at chatbots. It's the new shiny object. A few years ago, everyone was running to outsourcing, and then CSAT fell, and then everybody started running toward chatbots, seeing it as the new shiny object. It was the fastest growing channel. Web chat was the fastest growing a couple of years ago, and we're seeing chatbots have just been exploding. But unfortunately, what a lot of companies do is they often take a inside-out approach, and they just say, hey, we got to have a chatbot, we got to put one out there. And they often deploy them without having a clear plan and without having it tied in with the data and with their other channels of communication. And then we're also seeing that a lot of people, they still want to deal with live agents. When there's a problem, they want to talk to a live agent. And a really telling stat is Gartner is actually predicting that almost half of the chatbots that are deployed in the current year will be decommissioned. And a key reason for that is because of CSAT issues. So as you can see, 80% of companies will implement chatbots. We're hearing from some analysts that about half of them are going to be yanked out. So we really wanted to talk today about how you can make sure that as you deploy and you move toward this new shiny object, how you can be successful. So first, two common mistakes. This is actually from the great new study that just came out here from IQPC and the CCW team, from Brian and his team. Some of the common chatbot mistakes: no value for the customer. People put a chatbot out there just as they might have put out an IVR in the past, saying, "Hey, we've got to put this out here to deflect calls, to maybe save some money, save some effort from the business." But they don't look at it actually from the customer standpoint, where it might be increasing effort, increasing friction for the customer. No attention to customer preferences. There could be people who don't want to deal with a chatbot, or they don't want to deal with a chatbot at that particular spot in the customer journey. And then a key one is the omni-channel capabilities. Putting out a chatbot that's really not connected to the other channels in a single conversation can be very frustrating, add a lot of friction. When suddenly you're chatting, there was a PC manufacturer I was chatting with last year. I had a simple question, and then when I had to be escalated to an agent, I had to start all over again. So not having that seamless omni-channel capability is another mistake. And then also agent empowerment, bots and some of these other AI capabilities can actually help agents, and a lot of times they're deployed in silos and they're not actually doing that. So those are just some of the common chatbot mistakes that we've seen.
Well, thanks a lot, Ted. Really unpacking the importance of understanding that context. And you really let us know, A, why the customer experience is so crucial and where we're failing, why digital is so important to that ability to succeed and thrive when it comes to the customer experience, and then looking at the role chatbots play, why they're taking off, why they become so important, but maybe why they haven't made the impact that we're looking for. And so for the next part of our conversation, I want to jump into some actual tips. You set some of those common mistakes and common challenges. We're going to tackle each of those, but from a more positive and more upbeat perspective. Here's what you can do so that suddenly your chatbots are working for your organization and that you're not falling victim to those pitfalls. So the first tip really concerns the idea of something that really frankly applies to any customer experience investment you make. Does it make sense? Now, bots may not be as advanced as we want them to be right now. Let's be real. They're not completely replacing the versatility or emotional capacity demonstrated by agents in the status quo. But they can do a lot of things very well. Unfortunately, we don't necessarily tap into all those strengths. We instead tend to look at bots just for things that they can do okay. They can take this task away from agents. They can replace this one aspect of our customer journey, and they're not going to totally ruin the customer experience. But is that what we want? Is that what we want in the era of competing on the customer experience? To do things decently well? To find okay, acceptable substitutes? I hope you're answering no, because my answer would certainly be no. The goal shouldn't just be to determine if the bot can do the task, but if it should be doing the task. What unique value are we getting from the bot that we couldn't get from another engagement mechanism? Is the chatbot actually customer-centric? Some of the examples we've given in our reports, I know that Ted just referenced one, and that a lot of people I speak to talk about. One example might be on when it comes to medical appointments. Let's say you have an ailment and it's kind of in a private part of your body and you really don't want to talk about that with a person over the phone. A bot might be a great tool for you to find out, put in your symptoms, kind of set an appointment, get everything straightened out. It makes you feel a little less awkward, but you still get what you need and you're able to get the medical help and attention that you're looking for. Another example might be, let's say you need to change your pizza delivery order. You could call the loud restaurant, but you're going to have to give them your name or your number. You're not going to be able to hear them very well. They're going to have to look everything up. You're going to have to say you want to change the order. They're then going to have to recalculate the bill. That's very inefficient and very likely to have some accuracy issues. What if you could instead use a bot to just easily, conveniently, and accurately change your order right from your phone? It makes a lot more sense. And then obviously internally there's a lot of tasks that agents shouldn't be handling that we can start to use bots for. Now, beyond just generating inherent value, I think you also want to consider what bots can do better than static self-service, right? Because at the end of the day, that's really what bots are replacing in the journey, would be like a static self-service tool or an IVR in some cases. And so look at the self-service of yesterday and what can bots do better. If the bot is just doing the same exact stuff as an FAQ page, then wouldn't it make more sense just to keep the cheaper, easier FAQ page that you already have? Why waste all this time and money on a bot if it's not actually doing anything? And so the way to sort of break out this kind of value, this purpose, I think we have two tests that we want to look at. The first is the value test. Is the bot logical to the experience? Does it fit correctly into the journey? Does it do what it should be doing for the customer? You also want to look at whether it communicates naturally. I'm not saying the bot should be expected to have the most intimate conversation of the year, so to speak, but does it allow the customer to speak like a real person? That's, again, what the value is supposed to be, so you want to make sure that that's happening. And then finally, you also want to look at, does it make the experience better? This is what I alluded to earlier. I mean, we have, as an example, identified the FP3 experience, the frictionless, personalized, predictive, and proactive, as sort of that ideal experience. Well, if the bot isn't contributing to that, then realistically, it's not necessarily worth adding to your journey. You want to make sure it's actually making the experience better, that's creating positive value for your customers. And to figure all that out, a good starting point would be to identify pain points within your journey and then determine if a bot would be a way to eliminate those pain points or at least make them less painful for your customers. The other test that I referenced here is the idea of a preference test, and this is all about customer centricity, right? So you want to look at which issues are better for a customer to handle on their own. And when you answer that question, think like a customer, not like a cost-conscious business person. Not which would you prefer not to have inbound to your live call center agents, but what would customers prefer to be able to handle on their own. You also want to look at what's best suited for chat and messaging, right? Because ultimately bots, especially on the end user side, are going to be kind of communicating in a text-based chat or messaging sort of environment. So you want to look at which issues actually get a lot of value there. Things along the lines of like managing your account when you're already on the web and you want to use data. That's a great example of where, a text-based conversation makes sense, and so a chatbot would be very valuable in that scenario. And then finally, you want to look at, does the customer really have a choice? So when you're looking at your voice of the customer data and you're trying to understand what is the customer's intent, what are they looking for, you want to make sure that you've actually given them a choice so that the data is credible. If you just force them into self-service and say, 80% of our customers love self-serving, you can't make that conclusion. You don't have the accurate information. So in order to build the right journey, you want to make sure that you've given customers a real choice and then look at their preferences, then look at their intentions, and decide how to optimize the experience.
Great. And then for the next tip, Brian, thanks much for tip 1. I'll take tip number 2. So this is actually one of my favorite subjects, and this is really about not creating silos, true omnichannel with your bots. So we're seeing some recent research, channels are continuing to proliferate. I mean, we didn't even have bots, we didn't even have chat, we didn't even have text if you go back a few years back. And now we're seeing from Forrester and others that channels on average are increasing from 9 to 11. And now we're seeing even new channels like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and others. So as these new channels are coming about, it's very important that we don't create additional silos, but we keep a true omnichannel conversation with these new channels as well as our existing channels. And one of the key points here, you can actually see that currently today, over half of people are saying bots are either not or somewhat effective. So clearly there's a lot of work to be done, and that's what we're really going to talk about today, what can be done to really make these bots, helpful bots, and very much improving the customer experience. So the first part of this tip to really offer true omnichannel is don't deploy the bots or the new messengers as new silos, but seamlessly connect them with channels of choice. So if people want to maybe come into your business via Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or through a bot, we need to make sure that all these different pieces are connected together as one. And I think one of the key ways you can do that is to make sure that you don't actually just create new silos and new bolt-on solutions, point solutions, but make sure whatever customer service platform you're using, whether it's a cloud-based one like from BrightPattern or one you create yourself or however you happen to do it, it's very important that you make sure that these bots and emerging channels can be integrated into the solution as one single conversation. So that's really part of the omnichannel. A little bit more on omnichannel is the world's going mobile. There was a study that just came out this year. It was exciting. We all know the world's been going mobile. But COPC recently reported that mobile care is actually going to increase or has increased by over 40% this year. So mobile is obviously only increasing in its importance. Banks I think are one of the coolest examples because they've always been, like a lot of retailers, some of the most innovative companies. And they were the first to really create the most useful initial apps. Like think of the deposit your money feature. But then you go to that same app, and it might be when you want to contact the company, it might send you to a general number where it asks you what language you want to speak. So instead of implementing mobile in a very rigid, high-friction manner, companies should instead take a look at mobile and make sure they build the customer experience into that mobile journey. So for example, mobile apps today don't just have to be that single generic number in the app. You can actually, within apps today, you can put in things like web chat right inside of the app. I mean, BrightPattern, this is something that we do. You can put in-app messaging with Facebook, with chat, with video, even document sharing. So for example, if you're stuck trying to plug in cables at the back of your TV and you're calling in for help, a person can actually share a diagram of where to plug that cable in on the back of that new TV you might have just gotten here on Black Friday. So as part of this movement to offering true omnichannel with these bots and these other channels, it's very important that you make sure that you do that, not just for the traditional desktop world, but for the mobile world that's increasing significantly. And then really on tip number 2, sort of the omni-channel test. One thing I love about the new report that Brian just came out with is they had some key things like, here's your test, does it do this? These are your litmus tests. And I think one of the key things to look at is when you look at your bots, are they available at the appropriate point in the customer's journey? Obviously, at an early point where maybe you're looking at getting some basic triage and some basic information before you escalate to a human. That's one of the key things to look at. So think of it from the customer standpoint, outside in as opposed to inside out, and make sure you're offering bots at the appropriate spot. Secondly, as we talked about, make sure the bots are connected to all the other communication channels so you have that seamless conversation. And then finally, are they really integrated as part of your contact center framework? This goes back to that platform approach, which is really key, not just for bots and these new messaging channels, but really for all your channels. If you want to have that low friction, personalized, easy conversation for customers and also make it easy for your agents, you need to give people the ability to have that as part of a single conversation in your contact center platform. So that's really the key point of tip number 2, make it true omnichannel, and just some ideas there on how to do that. Okay. Tip number 3, this gets back to human and bots working as one. I still remember one of the leading industry analysts years ago talking about the rise of the robots, and people were talking about, hey, is it going to be robots versus humans? And one of the terms that another industry analyst came up with is this idea of blended AI, and that's really what we're seeing at BrightPattern and a lot of our customers are doing. It's really about humans and bots working as one. So you let the bots do what they do best, and you let humans what they do best. So for example, the bot in this example here on the right can gather some basic information, some basic triage of information, and then when needed, when there's an indication that a human is needed, you then bring the human in to offer additional assistance. And again, going back to the previous tip on omnichannel, it's very important that person then have the full context of that bot conversation and all information is passed forward. Secondly, we shouldn't ever really think of it as bots versus humans. The robots really are here to serve the humans, and that includes agents. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. And then also, this is really key. Send your bots to school is how I phrase it. I think in the CCW report, they talked about using data, and I think that's really a key thing. What we really mean by that is take a look and regularly look at what's happening with your bots, see what types of conversations are occurring, and then build and orchestrate the journey based upon those different types of conversations. So if someone's asking about like TVs on Black Friday, again, since it's sort of that time of the year right now, you might want to look at what are some of the products they're looking at, what are some of the conversations or questions they're asking, and make sure the bots are continually updated. And this is where agents don't really go away. Agents are actually going to be some of the best sources to actually train the bots to be really more effective and lower friction and offer greater customer experiences. And then in tip number 4, this is a really key one about AI-empowered agents. So I think really what's key with all these different channels is first, for agents to have a single unified omni-channel agent desktop where they have all information at their fingertips, like every bit of information as a customer has come in across the different channels. They were last on the website doing this. They were last chatting on the web here. They then came in through a text message. But giving that information where the agent can see that in a single unified desktop, similar to what we offer here at BrightPattern, is really key. And then this is a really key thing. AI is sort of seen as this still off on the horizon for many companies, and there's a lot of confusion about it and how to make it effective. But the reality is it's even available now for mid-sized companies. So basically the bots can start by collecting some of the basic information and escalate to the humans, as we previously talked about. But the bots can even do more. So for example, in this example that we have here on the left, on the right, we have somebody who's chatting and they're asking about Maui. And then through natural language processing, the bots or the AI system can actually suggest, hey, do you know about the Westin Kaanapali? Have you heard about the Seaside Hotel? So this is where natural language processing and AI can actually provide suggestions to the agent, whether it's in it for a chat response. This could also be a text response for the agent. It could also be for a voice response. Basically, bots can help and AI can help the agent. So they're actually serving the agents, not just the consumers who are coming in. So that's really a key thing. And this capability now is integrated into platforms such as BrightPattern, where you can have that single conversation, bots, all your channels, and AI all in an all-in-one package. And then finally, a little bit more on empowering agents, but I'd like to turn this over to Brian because this came out of his study, and I thought it would be good for him to address this one.
Thanks a lot, Ted. And yeah, so when you think about agent empowerment and the connection with bots, obviously that's hugely important. And you certainly have bots that can function as concierges, that can directly impact agent performance and are on the inside. But even external bots can really have an impact on agents, and so it's really something to consider that no matter what kind of bot you're employing, what is it doing to actually empower agent performance? And so first of all, you want to ask a question, how will agent workflow change? If it's internal, then you're going to want to look at what processes are agents no longer going to be spending their time on because the bot's taking those over. How is their day-to-day changing as a result of the AI that you're using? And if it's external, you want to look at how the issues are going to change. In an ideal world, bots are going to completely handle certain types of issues that will then never reach live agents. And if live agents don't have to deal with those issues, what will they have to deal with? You really want to make sure that you're considering that workflow and preparing your agents accordingly. You also want to look at escalated conversations. So because bots are more intelligent than a static self-service tool, they should be collecting more information at the point of contact. And so when a customer escalates, you want to make sure that information is being properly communicated to the agent so they have more with which to work when the call starts. They can deliver a more personalized and quicker conversation. And then also you want to consider how bots can help script some behaviors. If you look at how the bot communicates with customers, you essentially have a great focus group, a great study into what kind of language resonates with customers and what kind of language doesn't, what kind of issues are more common. Using all that information, you can then prepare your agents to be more successful. You can kind of better forecast their workflow, improve training, give them more context. Just by having bots used correctly in the journey, you create stronger, more productive, more engaged, more valuable agents. And so Ted and I have shared a lot of information about what you should be doing, what you could be doing, what you're not doing right now. And believe me, we've put a lot of thought into this. You're going to want to take some of those notes. But just in case you're a little skeptical about some of these best practices, we thought it would be great to end with some real-world success stories, organizations who have taken these steps and actually achieved success. And to walk us through these case studies, we have Shelby, who's going to share how chatbots can really be successful in practice.
Great, Ryan, and thank you, Ted. Those were some really excellent tips, and I definitely think it gives all the attendees listening today a great framework to get going on building their bots. But like you mentioned, there is a little bit of skepticism about it, and I wanted to share some real-life examples to kind of help you guys see how you can successfully deploy these in your customer service strategy. So first up, we have Madison Reed. They are becoming more of a household name, but for those of you who haven't heard of Madison Reed, they sell premier at-home hair dyeing kits. And one of the problems that they were coming across is people that traditionally get their hair done professionally are used to getting some advice, getting the professional advice on what hair coloring to choose. So what they were seeing is a lot of customers were putting several different colors into their cart, but then abandoning their cart because it was a little overwhelming. They didn't know how to choose. So with that, they wanted to implement some new self-service channels, including AI and bots. And the primary channel they wanted to use was Facebook Messenger in order to help customers identify the hair coloring needs. And with this, the goals were to increase sales and develop more loyal customers. So once this was good, I actually decided to go in and give it a try myself. And what were the outcomes? How did it do? I thought it did really well. It was nice to have an immediate response instead of sitting in an IVR or sending an email. The chatbot got back to me immediately. It was actually proactive. It popped up immediately and asked me if I wanted to submit a picture to identify my hair color. And even more so, it was a really friendly bot, and it matched the brand that Madison Reed encompasses. So I think that that's important as well for your chatbot to be friendly if you're a friendly type of a company. Some additional outcomes, the response was really quick. They replied back, and they actually had links next to each of their recommendations so that I could actually go to the website and view online for additional self-service options. And most important, at the end, instead of just kind of closing off the conversation, they actually asked if I'd like to talk with a live agent. And I wanted to give this a try just to see how successful it was. And I was surprised that when I talked with the agent, they picked it up from the exact point the chatbot left off. They were given all of the information from the previous conversation, and they essentially just asked me if I was ready to purchase or if I had any additional questions. So I was really impressed by that. The second case study I want to go over is a travel chatbot that we actually partnered with. It's our partner Altera AI that created this bot. They had similar goals of increasing sales and developing new loyal customers through a Facebook Messenger chatbot. And theirs was primarily to help traveling customers book their travel plans. So this is flights, hotels, and actual experiences while on their trips. Again, the outcome was great. It helps with navigation, so you're not just scrolling through pages and pages of different flight itineraries or hotels to choose from. It actually asks important questions to kind of help you decide what's best. You don't necessarily need to pay for an expensive travel agency. The bot can help you through it. So it's also very proactive in how it suggests these recommendations. It's also easy to use. I mean, you can use it on your computer or your mobile phone. A lot of us are on the go on a day-to-day basis, so it's great having these chatbots on Facebook Messengers so that customers can use them wherever they are. They also helped travel agencies. They had higher conversion rates, personalization, cost savings, and empowered agents, both through the fact that the chatbot handled easier interactions, leaving more complex interactions for agents, and also, like Ted mentioned, through AI Agent Assist, where the bot actually continues to help the agent when the agent is speaking with the customer. So those really prove that chatbots are no longer a trend of the future. They can be very helpful as long as they're implemented correctly, as long as you take into consideration what your customer pain points are, make sure it's customer-centric, and integrate seamlessly with all other channels. So they're here and they're here to stay. So now I want to pass it back over to Ted. He's going to give you some background info on BrightPattern and how we can bring your AI and bot dreams to reality.
Great. Thanks, Shelby. And I'm going to be very brief. One thing I love about this industry, I've been in it for 15 years, and I don't want to give you a commercial on BrightPattern. We're not going to do that. But what I love most is really just seeing the gleam in customers' eyes when they start doing things in brighter, better ways, pardon the pun. And customer service and customer experience is just a really exciting industry, and there's never been a better time to be here with this new era of bots and AI and everything else. And Shelby, thanks very much for those. What I really loved about some of those examples is, a lot of times you see it in the slides, but when you can actually see it in action, when you can actually see some of these companies that are truly disruptors. These are going to be, these are some really innovative companies that are very personal. Like, what can be more personal than your travel and your vacation, or your hair color and things like that. These are very personal discussions. And to think that these customer experiences can be addressed with a bot and with AI in a very personal, low-friction way that you actually get excited about tells you that these tips are possible and this is doable today. That lack of satisfaction that we see with most bots, the stat at the beginning of this presentation where we saw that almost half the bots deployed this year will be decommissioned, we just shared some of those stats. But you can actually see that bots done right, as Shelby put it, can actually lead to a much better customer experience. So without giving you a BrightPattern, but just so you know who we are if you're not familiar with us, the original engineering team at Genesis many years ago are the guys who created BrightPattern. And actually my boss, our CEO, Michael McCloskey, he was the CEO who took Genesis public. So we've got a number of people in the organization who are really some of the original pioneers of the contact center industry. And we really wanted to build, we looked at all the solutions out there, and we really wanted to build a product for the future, something that was basically easy to use. So we want to revolutionize how businesses interact with customers, make it easier and faster, low friction, low effort, and just super high personalization, where you don't need an army of professional services, actually where you need no professional services, and where businesses can quickly and easily make changes to business rules in the system. So a super easy customer service platform, not not based on premise-based solutions that are maybe ported to the cloud, but starting and being born in the cloud to make it easy for our customers. And some of the examples that Shelby just shared show how it can be done. And I don't want to give you a big commercial on BrightPattern, but basically we offer a cloud contact center solution that's every channel you can imagine, from AI and bots to Facebook Messenger to voice, IVR, every channel, and we make it where you can deploy it literally in weeks at the lowest possible cost. So just a little bit on BrightPattern, and with that I'll turn it back over to you, Brian. Thanks very much for the opportunity to join today. Really appreciate it. Really fun conversation.
Very much, Ted. As always, it was a pleasure to have insights from you. And Shelby, thanks for walking us through the realities of how chatbots can make an impact within customer contact functions. Again, what I set this conversation up was describing how, for all the hype, we're still very much reaching for those examples of how to make it work for us. We know it's powerful. We know the technology is interesting, but is it customer-centric? Is it agent-centric? Is it business-centric? And you, through your examples, show that it definitely is for certain companies, and through Ted, through your guidance and your tips, you revealed how anyone out there, big company, small company, brand with 200 years experience, digital age brand, anyone can make bots work for them. The goal is to think about what they're trying to achieve, who their customers are, what their journey looks like, and when you have that purpose, when you have that context, you leverage bots as an asset, not a frivolous add-on to your contact center. That's the way you succeed in the future of the contact center. So thanks so much for a great session here, and let's move on to our next session.